Okay, we're recording and we're back with Laura Brand, serial killer whisperer and resident criminologist. Laura, unfortunately, we haven't been on. We weren't on last week because of the fires in Southern California. We're in Southern California. We're about 15 miles from the epicenter we were right in the middle of between Pacific Palisades and Altadena. So we thought we were going to be affected. We were
almost evacuated twice.
We
got alerts twice in the middle of the night, which was terrifying. And
luckily
lost our power. We lost power, but that was all that happened, luckily. And so many people have lost their homes, and our hearts are broken for all these people. It's been a tragedy that epic proportions. And please have it in your heart to pray for Southern California, and really these people really need help. Whatever you can do to help them. It's
donate to the Red Cross.
Tragic. So, and we have a GoFundMe for one of our colleagues. His mother lost her house in the Pacific Palisades fire. She's 77 years old. She ran for her life. It's the most horrifying story.
And nothing's left.
So they are doing a GoFundMe for her. We'll put the link in the show notes, and it's a real GoFundMe because there's a lot of scams too. So be careful with GoFundMes, but definitely, if you can send anything to help and volunteer or anything, we need help down here. It's been awful.
Yeah, it's been crazy, but we're glad to be back with Laura.
Yeah.
And then Laura, just to you were on another podcast, or
I was. Sorry.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I was on The Breakfast Serial Killer, and he has some great videos online if you want to check him out. And he has an Instagram page where he does a lot of, satire about serial killers, and he makes fun of them and does some really funny videos. But he has a great YouTube channel. So we did a live on Wednesday, and you can go to his channel, The Breakfast Serial Killer, and check it out.
Cool.
And welcome if there's anybody from his channel watching now.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's great. Well, listen, I think the last time we were talking to Serial Killer X, who we still haven't named, and we know who he is, and obviously you know who he is, but
we don't really want to give him any publicity
unless we've given him a challenge, because we told him that if he would reveal remains of some of his victims and where they are, that we would consider telling people who he is. So hopefully he does that. Not sure when was the last time you spoke to him?
Last night.
Mm-hmm. What was the temperature on that?
Well, it's funny because I had a medium from Florida reach out after the episode that we did, and she was listening to him, and she said, I'm seeing a tattoo on a left breast and an ankle. And she told me what they were. And I went back and asked him about this. Well, I said, did you ever kill somebody with a tattoo, and where were they? He was like, a left breast and ankle. And
wow.
Out from the
I would like to talk to her, because I think that there's this whole world that, is now becoming more mainstream of mediums and psychics and things who are legit and actually get information. I mean, I have had things happen to me in the past. I would love to talk to her.
And to be completely full disclosure, we know a lot of police departments have consulted psychics when they run like against a brick wall on a murder investigation. And so they do employ them sometimes.
Was that victim found, or is that still
She's missing. She is missing.
Victim.
And apparently it freaked him out so much, he told the other inmates he thought it was a ruse or a lie, that this medium reached out to me from the podcast, and that I'm working for homicide, and I'm getting this straight from the homicide department, because how else could I have known that?
We definitely need to get her on.
Yeah. And then you guys have met the medium that I use too.
Oh, she's fantastic. I have to tell you, I have been around this world with mediums and psychics. My family, we're all psychic. We all have this gift. And the woman that Laura sent me to knew things that no one could know. Like, she knew the name of the dog that my dad adored, and told me to tell my dad that the dog was saying hello to him. Like, there's just no way. No one would ever know that dog's name. It wasn't even our dog. It's not on the internet. She couldn't find that information. And the name of the dog is so unusual. you just wouldn't know it if it wasn't in the family. And she
Yeah.
knew my grandmother's name, and she knew that my grandmothers were born on the same day. I mean, there was so much information that this woman knew. And everything she said has happened.
She's
Everything
incredible.
she told me was going to happen this past year.
Yeah.
So I do believe in psychic gifts. I do believe in mediumship. I do believe that people have gifts. There's a lot of frauds, of course, but there's a lot of legit people. And I will tell you, when I was doing the Green River Killer, I was desperately looking for one of Gary Ridgway's victims was his favorite. As you know, like they have these favorite victims.
Right.
And I was desperately looking for this girl's family. Kelly, her name was Kelly, and she was beautiful. She looked like Marilyn Monroe. She was a beautiful girl. Couldn't get anyone, couldn't find anyone. I was trying to find her mother. I was like, I got to find someone who was related to her. And I was like, 4:00 in the morning, I get a phone call from this weird number in Pennsylvania. And this psychic, this woman, she's like, are you Cindy looking for Kelly? And I'm like, how did you get my number? She's like, don't worry about it. I have Kelly's mother's phone number. She's on a ship right now. She's a performer. And I was like, what are you saying? And I was like in the middle of the night, and I couldn't believe this happened. And she gave me the phone number for Kelly's mother. I call her, and she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe you're actually going to be doing a story on my daughter. And she was so happy that we were doing the show, but I don't even know how the psychic got my phone number. It was the craziest thing. I can't even tell you. It was so crazy. And then and this has never happened to us ever. Like when Rob and I are shooting, we're like totally ridiculously anal about everything. We check everything 10 times. This never happens. So we race up from, we were in, I think, Seattle. We went down to Portland, Oregon to go meet Kelly's mother. And we're doing the interview, and I was not feeling it. I was like, she's kind of holding back. I didn't love the interview. I was like, something's not right. She's not telling us everything. She's giving us it felt very fake, and I didn't like it. And I was upset during the interview, and I was trying to get her to come out of her shell, and she just wasn't. So we finished the interview, and she was like, afterwards, she hugged me, and she goes, I feel Kelly in this room for the first time in a long time. And I said, I have goosebumps. Like, this is incredible. And she was getting emotional, and then she kind of stopped herself. And then we left. And then Rob, out of the blue, was like,
we went to a Starbucks, like right around the corner from her house. And I was like, I want to check the interview. Something made me feel, because we had worked with this guy who we haven't worked with before, camera wise. And so I always want to double check things before you do that. So we go there, I pull out the camera, start looking at the video, and there's no audio on the entire video.
Right.
So
we go back to the house, and we asked her, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, can we redo the interview? And the second interview that we did with her was so emotional, and she told us so much stuff. And she said after the interview, she felt like she finally had some piece of her daughter back that she had been closed off to for years. So it was like this really emotional thing. But it all started because this psychic reached out to me, and I don't even know how she got my phone number to tell me the number of Kelly's mother. So I don't know. I believe in synchronicities. I totally believe, you wear your cross, I wear my cross. I mean, I do believe that there's something.
It's vibrations. It's all vibrations.
Right.
So I would love to have that psychic on and hear what she had to say. The fact that she reached out to you and gave you information that he validated.
And it scared him. And he thought it was coming directly from homicide. Yeah.
It should scare him. So maybe we can find out where that girl is, so her family can put that girl to rest.
Yes. Yes. I would love to go into the prisons with an earpiece and have a medium on the other side. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy.
No, I think it's insane.
Yeah, you'd have to get them out of the prison in order to do that, like they did with Suff.
You think so?
Yeah, they wouldn't let you bring that stuff in there.
Oh, the prison, like the earpieces. No,
you wouldn't be able to get it in.
I just think that's incredible. Well, I'm glad she reached out to you, and I hope we can get more information on that girl.
And I'm glad, and it's funny how he thinks it's just like you're working with homicide. You're not working with homicide. Okay, you don't even have his case file.
Yeah, I'm not working with homicide on his case.
No.
I mean, there's no way. I mean, the serial killers brought him to me. It wasn't right. That's how I found him. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So this week we want to talk about the archetypes because I think it's so interesting, and we talked about the signs of a serial killer and we talked to Serial Killer X about how he fits into those signs and different levels of becoming a serial killer, or different phases of becoming a serial killer, I guess. But the archetypes are quite interesting because they are different.
They are.
There are 4 different archetypes, and Laura has done so much research and study on this, so it's really interesting to see what her thoughts are on this. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it is. And before I do an interview or even sit down with one, I always look at their case and I figure out what type he is, because that's going to tell me so much about him already, just knowing what kind of type. And you're going to see. I have examples of each 4, and you're going to totally see.
Bless you.
When I start going through. So I think what I'll do, I'll start with the visionary serial killer, number 1. So these individuals are motivated by a vision or a delusion that drives them to kill. They often believe that they are on a mission to eliminate certain groups of people or to achieve a specific goal. And so pretty much these visionary killers are typically, mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't like the Ted Bundys who are just, straight psychopathic. These ones have a mental illness underlying typically.
But it sounds like a David Koresh or someone who's like trying to lead a group of people towards a different vision of what life should be, or they have a purpose to.
Yeah, Jim Jones, cult leaders,
or
Manson.
But Manson, Jim Jones, I wouldn't even put them in the visionary. They had delusions, but I think, when it comes to mental illness, well, this is where it gets very dicey in a court of law, because did they have, do they know right from wrong is really the question. Did they know what they were doing was wrong? Or are they that mentally ill where they didn't understand what they were doing? So this is where it gets dicey, and it gets even more dicey because a lot of psychopaths love to mimic mental illness, especially when they get caught.
Sure.
So it's very hard to tell. So visionary serial killers are motivated by a delusional system. Now, they often believe they're going out to eliminate a particular group typically. So this could be, they're having a prophecy where they have to kill the homeless or a certain group of people.
The streetwalkers,
the
and
prostitutes,
runaways.
Yes. Yeah. And some will be under the delusion, it's God's voice talking to them, and they're just following the orders from God, or
like Son of Sam said the dog was talking to him.
Right. Or it could be,
which was all baloney. That was not true.
That's an example of a psychopath.
I didn't want to say
that's an example of a psychopath. Mimicking the dog was talking to him. Let's see what else. So, an example of, here's a couple examples of some good ones. Do you guys know Herbert Mullen? I actually interviewed him. He was believed he was preventing earthquakes in California by killing.
What?
Yeah, he was saving the world because there was going to be a massive earthquake.
Hold on. Yeah. What is going on out here? There's so many serial killers in California with all this crazy thoughts, all this crazy. I would love to do a study on that. Like, why is there so many serial killers just like in California?
Well,
alone?
It's 49 million people.
I don't care. It's like insane. And they were all around the same time, like in the same area, operating all at the same area. What the hell? The cops must have been like, what is going on down here? This is crazy.
It's really.
Where was he in California?
I think he was northern. But what's funny?
He was going to stop an earthquake by killing people. That's a new one.
Yeah, if he killed a certain group, he was going to save the world from the earthquake. But he had to do this first. This is an example of mental illness, a visionary killer. But what's funny? You say that, Cindy, is when John and I went to the Forensic Psychology Symposium in San Diego. He had all these slides of different serial killers, and every single one he was like, another one from California where we are now. And like, it was almost every slide. Like, we just started like laughing at it. We're like, oh, California. And I remember like everybody in the room was like, what's going on? Like, every single one you guys are mentioning is California. And we're like, this is the capital, really, for
It
them.
really is. It was a hotbed for, I mean, and what's really shocking is that they were all operating at the same time.
I
Like
know.
there was so many, like more than you even know. Like there's the famous ones, but then there were other ones too.
You got to think, and these are just the ones we know about too.
That's what I mean.
that have been caught.
And
Crazy.
how many are out there right now?
I know. I know.
I mean, that one guy was trying to do a copycat of the 2-box killers when we were up in the San Gabriel Mountains that one time.
Oh yeah, with the van. That was creepy.
I mean, there's weird stuff going on around here too lately, like people getting swiped off the street like randomly in our area. It's like a little, it never was happening before. And the last like year, it's been happening a lot.
Yeah.
People have been
Well,
curious about what, if that's related or if it's just random. I don't know. There's something weird going
well,
on.
also the fact that they weren't really prosecuting people, so they felt like,
Well, yeah, that was a big thing too.
that's a big thing. But
Well,
now
it changed now.
It's changed now. New DA, so hopefully that
I mean,
changes.
I always think like, how didn't they put Cindy and Andrea together, because they were taken like within blocks of each other, both blonde, young, blue-eyed girls, same time. Like, how did they not, like 2 weeks apart? How did they not go, okay, this is strange?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the 2-box killers, those two girls, Cindy and Andrea, 2 weeks apart. They
Mhm.
look similar. I mean, they had a similar look to them. Same age group, just vanish. Like they just vanish, like off
Right.
the street. Like,
Right.
I mean, you have to wonder, like, what, when they were piecing all the stuff together, like, but they didn't have the internet. They didn't have
Well, also
a
just
lot of the tools that we have.
But even today, though, I mean, if there's a random crime, if it's someone who takes someone and who kills them, who they have no relation to it, there's no motive, there's no way to kind of trace back who could have done it, because there's no motive, there's no connection. So if you just go up to a stranger and they get in your car and you get them in the car and you just take them up to a mountainous region, kill them, like there's nothing connecting the two. So it's a hard thing to do from an investigative point, unless there's like a witness or anything like that. And as you've told us in the past with the 2-box killers, sometimes there were witnesses would see these people get abducted,
Yes.
and people still wouldn't connect it.
No.
That is the scare. Was that Aunt Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same police department, and then it was the same police department that Kristen actually reported to as well.
Right, because one of them survived.
Kristen survived, but they were all within, let's see, Cindy and Andrew 2 weeks apart, and then Kristen was only about 3 weeks prior to Cindy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because right now they still haven't caught that guy who's been killing people in Austin,
Texas.
in Lake
We were
Travis.
there. We were in Lake Travis shooting another show for the Weather Channel. And we were at Lake Travis, and we were supposed to be diving because the show was about this treasure hunter, Brandon Jordan, who was diving. And so we're there at Lake Travis. Brandon's getting ready to dive. And then I'm talking to the guy that like runs the marina, and he's like, well, we just found out that you can't go to the other side because
The other portion of lake we wanted to go to was shut
because
down.
there's like they found 2 bodies,
Yeah.
and then they found another body, and then they found another body,
they
and
just
we were
reached
like, oh my
October,
god,
they found another
and it
one.
just keeps going, and they don't know, and it's been a little quiet on it, but it's definitely still happening. We've been seeing all kinds of things about it, and it was scary because you're like, oh my gosh, well, is it random? Are they connected? Is this one person? Is it a group of
Right.
people?
And Lake Travis is not like out in the middle of nowhere.
No.
It's surrounded by houses.
Yeah.
Right.
And, so it's like it's very close to Austin, and and it's in a development. Like very high priced houses are all around the lake, and tons of people who go out on the lake.
Well, look
So-
at the Long Island serial killer. That was a gated community.
I know.
Well, that part of the South Shore, yeah, that was a gated community. But some of the other places that the bodies were found was literally like in woods area near the South. I'm from Long Island. So the South Shore, that was very desolate area at that time. And it was like a place that people would run or jog or whatever, but there wasn't a lot of houses around or anything
And
like that.
during the main time frame of when the Long Island serial killer, the Gilgo Beach killer, was killing women, is during when Suffolk County was, the police department at that time was very corrupt.
Yeah.
And
That's when my friend was wrongly convicted of killing his parents and spent 18 years in
fingered
prison
him.
because of it. So it was a time like a lot of corruption. So you have to wonder like what was going on, around
Right.
that time. So, okay. So a visionary killer is someone who's thinks they're doing it for the greater good. So this
So-
guy thought he was going to kill people to stop earthquakes. So that's
Yes, and I've interviewed him actually, and he's passed away, but he was lucid when I interviewed him, at least. Another example, I'm not familiar with this case. Richard Dad, he thought he was on a mission to kill those who were possessed by the devil. And a lot of times with visionary killers, you do see a lot of, like, I don't know, religious themes too, with the God,
Sure.
devil. I mean, you see that with a lot of mental illness too.
Yeah. Going back to the earthquake guy, what was his theory for this? I'm curious. This is very interesting to me. Like, you're going to say that you're stopping earthquakes by killing certain people. What was his?
God told him.
Oh, God told him.
Yeah, that there was going to be a massive earthquake, but he could prevent it by killing this person, or like he would hear the voices to kill this person, that person. Yeah.
Was he schizophrenic?
He had a couple underlying mental illness. Well, not mental illness, but a couple. It was a few different things. And he was experiencing psychosis during a lot of this too. That's actually very common. A psychosis will occur with a lot of these visionary killers. And the next one is a very notorious one who's everybody is familiar with. And he is a perfect example of psychosis. It's Ed Gein.
I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, Ed Gein.
Really?
Yeah, we talked about him because remember we also talked to him about him on the DNA thing. So he was on the list of guys that was related to some of the Mayflower people.
Oh,
but he's a vicious guy.
All right, so tell us about him, because I mean, maybe some other people don't know either. I vaguely remember, but what did he do?
He's actually based they use him in Hollywood. He's based on Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on him. He was in Wisconsin. I've actually gone to his farm and the graveyard where he was doing a lot of his stuff, but he grew up with a very religious mother, dominant religious mother, and telling him that, women are whores, women are evil, that kind of stuff.
It all goes back to the mother.
It does. So there's allegedly he did have a brother, and his brother was going to get married. And they believe he did kill his brother because his brother was found, I think it was a woods fire, but there was a skull fracture, and he was walking with his brother, Ed. So they believe he actually started with his brother, who was going to leave the mother and get married, go against her. The mother dies, and he's left on this farm in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. And he starts digging up graves. And he made the skin suit. He used to dance under the.
So he would go to a graveyard and dig up graves.
Oh God!
I went to the graveyard. I have a video. Actually, I'll send it to you. I have the video.
No, I don't.
Where he went, it's the creepiest graveyard too. It was like
no, I can't. It's so horrifying. I can't even understand what goes on in someone's brain.
This is psychosis.
This is severe mental illness. This is
when they went into his house, it was literally the lamps were made of rugs, lamps, everything was made of skin. The fridge was full of body parts, and he was just living in human waste. He was convicted of killing 2 women. But they don't know how many he killed because his whole house was just, body parts.
Oh my God. You can't, this is like a horror. It is a horror movie. That is a horror movie.
They use him for a lot of horror movies.
Of course, it is a horror movie. It's horrible. It's the most horrifying thing you can hear. Oh my God, I can't. It's so dark and ugly and disgusting. But okay, you got to wonder, he must have shown signs of can you hear me? Hello?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Froze out for a second.
Okay, yeah. No, was he ever diagnosed with a mental illness as a child?
He never even went to prison. They put him straight into a mental facility.
I was going to say, my God.
Yeah. And he was and when they talked to the neighbors and stuff, they said he used to babysit the kids, and everyone said he was a nice guy, but a weird guy. But nobody really checked on him after his mother, died, and a part of his psychosis was the mother was talking to him. And it was just, it's a really, really wild case.
So tell us when did you go out to his farm?
when I went to to present at the homicide conference, it was
Mhm.
about like an hour away. And I've always been interested in this case. I mean, it's really just wild. And I went out with some of the homicide detectives, and we went to his farm, which is no longer there, but you can still go to the property. But we saw the hardware store where he had taken one of the victims, and then we went to the graveyard where he was digging up these bodies. And so it was just something I did with the homicide detectives during the conference. But we were all kind of like, oh my God, just so wild to see it, to see how desolate it is and see the graveyard, which is just so creepy, and just imagining
No.
him.
I can't imagine. I can't.
I'm sure the
It's
energy
just
was
too
pretty
dark.
I'm sure the energy was pretty heavy.
Yeah, it was weird.
Well, it's
Very.
like when we went up to the murder house. It was same
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
Very heavy energy.
That was awful.
the energy like freezes. I swear it like freezes in time.
It does freeze in time, and you can feel that heaviness of like,
Yeah.
what is this? Darkness, just evilness. You can just feel it. It's so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The town is just like one street long, like with a
Mm-hmm.
couple, like a
How
post
scary
office.
for the neighbors. Can you imagine?
He was babysitting the kids around the neighborhood.
This is the thing that kills me. It's like, wasn't Larry doing the same thing? Bittaker? He was like hanging out with
He
like,
was babysitting the teenagers. Yeah.
he was babysitting teenagers. Like he was hanging out with teenagers. People like, oh
Yeah.
no, it was Bill Suff. Bill Suff was babysitting kids.
No, he was saving the sex workers, he says. He was giving
Bill Suff was also babysitting the neighbors' kids.
Oh yeah. And then he killed his own daughter. Mhm.
Oh my God, I can't. All right. So visionary.
So yeah,
is
those are some
cuckoo.
examples of a visionary killer. Now, keep in mind that serial killers are relatively rare, and their motivations are very complex and difficult to understand because, of course, it's a mental illness.
Right.
Yeah, but
So, I mean, it's just so interesting. Like the brain is like, there's so much going on in people's brains that we
it's
don't
really
understand.
wild. Yeah,
The what?
it's really wild what like our brains, like what our brains can do, and what we're only using 10% of it,
I know.
Well, what I thought
and
was
just
interesting
mental illness.
what I thought was interesting when we've been
Wait,
talking.
she cut out again. What did you say?
Oh, did I cut out?
Yeah.
What was the last thing you heard?
Mental illness, then blank.
Oh, I think I stopped because Rob was.
Oh,
okay,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, what I was thinking, like when Serial Killer X, when he was saying we were trying to drill down, is like, what was it like after your first, killing? And then, he goes, well, it just gets easier each time.
Ugh.
It's like, because they get away with it, and then they realize, oh, I can get away with this, and I get that dopamine rush,
Mhm.
and there's no guilt associated. I was just like this because he's a classic example. I don't know whether it's an act with him or not, but he literally is. You don't hear any kind of remorse or guilt in his voice unless, and I don't know if that's true or not. And it's like so different than from him than when we've heard recordings with you and what's his name, Michael Gargiulo.
Yeah.
Who is kind of like dips in and out of his serial killer mode, trying to kind of dismiss some of his behavior and trying to make himself sound like a good person, and that that he isn't guilty, and they don't have like that. Whereas you have Serial Killer X, who
He doesn't care.
He's all in.
Yeah.
His chips are all in. He goes, I'm crazy. This is what I'm doing. He goes, but I won't tell you the details because there's a chance that I may get out.
And I want to do it again.
Yeah.
I know. I've given him a new nickname in the prison too. It's funny you mentioned Ridgway because I do have him on some of my notes too, but we're going to get to him. So yeah, a lot of the times, with visionaries, they're going to be under, typically it's, psychosis, hallucination from, a belief that they're coming from God, Satan, and they're doing something mission oriented, and it stems from mental illness. Now, let me see if I want to get into.
Was BTK doing that at all?
No, I do have BTK and Ridgway coming up.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say, Ed Gein's probably a really good example. For anybody who is interested in, maybe a visionary serial killer or looking into stuff of that nature, I definitely would say look into Herbert Mullen and Ed Gein for research, because they are really classic examples of a visionary killer. Let me see. Who do I want to? Oh, that one's coming up too. You guys are mentioning some of the ones that are coming up.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So visionary serial killers. Their typical motivation is driven by delusion, distorted views of reality, the need to fulfill a perceived divine or supernatural mandate. The underlying issues are psychosis, schizophrenia, which we've gone over, or other mental health conditions, but those are the two typical. Obviously, it's usually psychosis. Goals. Now, their goals is to for a sense of purpose, meaning, and they really think they're doing this for the greater good. I mean, that's what psychosis is. They think they're helping people. Like I just said, Herbert really thought he was going to stop this earthquake, for God and save all these people, but he just had to kill a couple people to do so. Yeah. But this is what mental illness looks like. Typically, people with mental illness don't get violent or go on a killing spree or become a serial killer. But this is an example of what happens when mental illness meets and someone does become a serial killer.
Yeah. Well, we're also, I mean, not that these people, I mean, it's happening all over the country now. I mean, if you see, like you have these people, New York is riddled with these people with mental illness who are pushing people in front of subways, attacking and stabbing them randomly,
setting someone on fire in the subway.
Someone just sent me that video and I'm like, this isn't real.
It's so horrifying. My friends are scared to take the subway in New York. They won't take the subway.
I don't think I would either. I used to take it in New York and I would not take it. After that video, no.
I hate the subway. No, I grew up in New York. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
But I mean, imagine.
They just in the New York subways I saw yesterday, they put like these jagged edges on where the turnstiles are, because normally they would just grab and they would jump over the turnstile. But they put these things that they have like these. They have these teeth on the rails now. So if you put your hands in the teeth, you're going to cut your hands. That's how crazy. I've created like. Oh wow! It's like you have to go through like this race. It looks like a saw blade.
No, the mental illness epidemic in this country is horrifying and needs to be addressed.
It does. I don't feel like there's any. I mean, there really isn't.
I mean, I'm running on my path where, we live in suburbia here. It's beautiful and we live on, a neighborhood that's very nice. And I'm running and I passed two homeless men who were screaming at the air, and you're scared because you're like, are they going to take all that energy and turn it on me in 1 second? And two people like just randomly, and it's every single day. It's every day, and these people need help. I mean,
right?
It's just not. It's not good. They shouldn't be wandering around like this. It's just bad for them. It's bad for us. It's just not good.
No, they need to be,
taken care of properly.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Right. I don't know what year it was, but then they got rid of a lot of mental hospitals, and I think that has, and most of them, there was reasons for it. There was a couple of them that were really operating poorly, and they were abusing the patients, and I think that's like my grandmother spent 30 years in a place called Creedmoor. And she died there. She went in when she was like in her late 20s, early 30s, and died there in her 60s. And Creedmoor, the Geraldo Rivera, like in the early 80s, did a documentary on it and found that there was some patients being abused, and so they shut it down. And I think that was like the first big one.
But they were also putting people in mental hospitals back then because, if you lost a child and you were emotional about it, or you couldn't handle this postpartum, or things that we can do now that we can work through those things that don't need to be in a mental hospital. I mean, I just think that mental health needs to kind of progress.
It definitely does. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of it is the insurance companies and not covering a lot of stuff.
Which is, it has to change. All right. So visionary is very scary. And what's the next one?
Okay. Well, the next one's actually very closely aligned with visionary because it's the mission-oriented killer. And actually, what would be a perfect example is the one who just killed the CO. What was it?
Ugh.
Yeah, New York. And there's
And
been
this is the thing. Like, I don't care what your thoughts
Hold on, wait,
are
before you get into
about
that,
any of it.
no, hold on with it. Explain that because I don't remember that. So let's give us some
What do you mean you don't
context.
remember that?
The
It's the
CO.
CEO of
Oh, the CEO. I thought you said the CO.
no, of United Healthcare.
Oh, I thought you
Like
said the CO.
either
Oh.
way, I don't care if you hate big business or not, and if you didn't like this person or not, or whatever. No one deserves to be killed.
right.
No one. I don't care. No one has the right to take someone else's life.
So he fits in what category?
Mission. I would place him in mission because I think he, it's hard. I mean, I really can't place him without having interviewed him. But it seems like he really believed he was on a mission to, help progress the
Mhm.
healthcare system, and this act of violence would, progress us forward in that way.
Well, it's like the 9/11 bombers. I mean, they were on a mission. They were on a mission to crush America. I mean, whatever their mission is, it's like those missions. You get someone who's like the kid who tried to assassinate Trump. He was on a mission.
They are just like the other ones you're talking about. They said they were doing it for God, for Allah.
Yeah, that would be mission.
Yeah.
Now I actually have quite a number of mission-oriented serial killers that I've interviewed.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I used the guy in New York with the CO shooting him. I brought it up to them. And I had some really long talks with them about that, and just to gauge where they were at. And I could see their thought process was still very much mission oriented. And they're like,
And which ones were they?
I'm not going to name them right now.
Okay, that's fine.
Because it was a very, I got really deep with all of them. I do have the recordings, but I could see, when they were talking about him, they're like, we're the same. Like, we're the same. We were doing this for the greater good. He did a really good thing. And I was like, oh, interesting. Tell me more. And I just explored it for hours with them. So yeah, mission-oriented serial killers. They're similar to serial killers because they are mission-oriented. Their aim is to eliminate specific groups of people, such as prostitutes, could be homosexuals, or members of a particular race or ethnic group. But this can be wide-ranging. It could be, it could be people who are mentally ill. It could be homeless people. It could be anything, whatever they're on mission to do. It could be, people in the healthcare, at the top of the food chain for the healthcare system, like we're seeing. So, and I know I just heard that there's a lot of CEOs of these big companies now actually getting private security.
Well, no, most of them do, but now it's like, because
yeah.
But I have a friend of mine who has a private security firm in the East Coast and does corporate security. And they said that guy, I mean, for this amount of money that, that they were paying the security completely failed because he was so accessible.
Yeah.
And he would have never been on the street without security.
Right.
So someone, especially with a high profile job, any of those high profile jobs, like, like Elon Musk has like one of the top security teams. You never see, how they're good they are. You never see them next to him.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't even see them.
You don't even see them. And, a lot of them, like, apparently Joe Rogan has a very big security team too, like all these, because you're a target, and you get these crazy people that will get fixed in their head that, you don't need to be on this planet anymore. And they can gain attention by taking you out, which is part of it too. Just like, the kid Kruksak, the one who tried to assassinate Trump,
Or even just on the local level where our daughter's school had a kid who went in and
school shooting,
shot 2 students and then shot himself. It's like he was on a mission, he was going to get all the popular kids or whatever.
He was going to make a statement.
It's just making a statement. I mean, it's tragedy. It's terrible.
It is. And, especially with mission-oriented killers, they're not necessarily under psychosis or, there might not be mental illness. But they do have a delusional thought process. They are doing this for like a greater good, for whatever reason it might be. They're just on mission.
Yeah, well, because a lot of them, like, the CEO, the United Healthcare, he had a manifesto.
Right.
Yeah, the girl in Tennessee who's shot up to school, where they found out that she was transgender. So she had a manifesto, and they still haven't released it.
Oh, really?
They have never released it.
Interesting.
So I would imagine that these mission-oriented killers feel like some kind of camaraderie with each other
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely say so. They do. Because
in order to kind of justify their behavior, I would imagine.
right, because what I just recently explored with them, having the opportunity to have that in the media, and I took advantage of it to explore more. Yeah, they definitely seem to look at each other and have some type of camaraderie. Like I said, they were saying, he's just like us. He was doing something for the greater good. So it shows that the delusional thought process can still remain even when they're in prison, that they have still done something good for the world, and there's nothing wrong with what they have done.
Is it how they are able to survive because they're able to kind of justify their behavior? I
Yeah.
imagine.
I think so. I think a lot of it, yeah. Yeah, because I think it would be.
Do you think they feel guilt or empathy more than the other kind of killers?
I would say
More than the
possibly
other archetypes?
don't want to face it. It's like they don't want to look in the mirror. I don't think they want to face that they did a really violent, horrific act, and they want to tell themselves that it was that they did something good for the world. Like they can't face looking in the mirror and realizing, no, I just murdered innocent people.
Yeah,
You know?
I wouldn't imagine that there's a whole lot of introspection coming with that group.
No, I think they're going to stay in that safety zone of delusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And this happens, with in cults too, is like a lot of times when they have to bring in cult deprogrammers who have killed, or like Manson would be an example where they think they're doing this for the greater good or whatever, and then when the cult deprogrammer is able to get them out of the brainwash and back to reality, it can be they actually put them on suicide watch, because usually that when it finally dawns on them what they've done, and they've been brainwashed, and now, oh my god, people are dead. I've seen videos of it. It's really just
well, it was
horrific.
interesting that I want to talk about the CEO killer, United Healthcare, because it's funny, the one shot they did of him, Photoshop of, he was wearing a thing called a suicide robe that they gave him. So I don't know whether or not they were afraid that he was going to off himself like that, but it's like this weird kind of poncho. You've probably seen him when you're in prison. It's like that blue poncho, and they can't rip or tear it, or they can't do anything to it. It's like literally they don't get anything else other than that. Just kind of drapes over them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but getting back to Manson, what I think he's a little bit distinct because he was part of that program back in the 60s and early 70s, the MK Ultra program, where they gave him high doses of LSD.
Right.
And I'm sure, he probably had some mental issues anyway, because he was a homeless guy. And then he was like, but I would imagine that exacerbated the delusion to the point of,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
And that, and then also,
I mean,
a lot
do
of
we
these
even really understand?
Yeah. I mean, because it was like, because we've been looking into the MK Ultra thing pretty extensively, because it's actually part of another story that we're working on that they did in prisons, with the Alcatraz inmates. A lot of them were there. James Whitey Bulger was part of that program, and they all said that they had, I mean, there's high doses, like extremely high doses of LSD, will make you crazy,
Yeah.
when you have distort reality and stuff. So I don't know if that kind of factors into the archetypes, or is it, because then you have people who are born crazy and they have those delusions and they have schizophrenia and they have all, and then you have ones that are induced by it through excessive drug overdoses, whether it be meth, LSD, PCP, which we've known people to go homicidal on that as well.
Right.
So how do they fit into those archetypes?
Well, what I would say is, I would say I'm going to put anything hallucinogenic to the side. I'm just going to talk about
Okay.
other narcotics. I'm going to group the other narcotics together. I think a lot of times, like if they get drunk or they use cocaine or meth, whatever they use, and they commit a homicide, I think they had the underlying urges before, and this just brought it out of them.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will say with hallucinogenics, it's putting, I mean, it goes into the brain. It's considered poison. I mean, and you literally you hallucinate, you see everything. It's a whole different type of drug than like a normal narcotic. And I mean, it's shown you can manipulate someone's, entire brain and how they function, how they act through hallucinogenics. So I feel like that's a whole different discussion. I would say the regular, there's underlying urges. There still needs to be an exploration with hallucinogenics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to sidetrack you, so keep on going.
I've actually been looking into the MK Ultra too, and it's really crazy.
I got to read this book. You should look it up too. It's a good book by Tom O'Neill.
Yeah.
And I think he was a Rolling Stone writer, and he was only supposed to do an article about it, and he ended up spending 20 years on it and then released a book. I think they're making a movie about it too right now. But I've been wanting to read this book because it talks about the whole program. And there was a documentary about this CIA agent that they were using as a lab rat, that eventually they weren't even telling him they were drugging him. And then he ended up jumping out of
they weren't even telling him
window and killing himself, and his family years after did a documentary try to find out what happened to him. It's pretty amazing. I forget what it's called.
That's crazy. That's really crazy. See, that's what I mean. It's like a hallucinogenic. I mean, you could really think there's something chasing you and jump out of a window.
Oh yeah. No.
So I mean,
no, I've done hallucinogens. I mean, I've done LSD. I've done a bunch of stuff like that, and it's like, but it was never in excess. It was never in excess.
They were probably. I mean, they were giving them really heavy doses.
Super, like.
Yeah.
So scary.
Yeah, and they were giving it to him every day.
That's even crazy.
Like your brain needs, after that, you need like a good week to recover from that. I mean, because it doesn't really hurt your brain, but anything in excess does. Like, it's like you have a little bit of alcohol, but if you're drinking alcohol every day, all day long, and you're drunk, I mean, everything starts breaking down. Anything in excess is like that.
Yeah. 100%. And a lot of the times, the serotonin and dopamine, it all gets released at once, like a big pop. Brain needs to, recharge and get what it was back to normal. And I can't even imagine, like, just day after day, heavy amounts of LSD. I mean, what?
Yeah. I mean, because they've done experiments, and they're still doing experiments where it actually helps heal the brain and, and the brain molecules in there and all that stuff. But it's like it's the dosage, like, Ibogaine is like a big thing now that's being done for PTSD for soldiers that have been doing it.
All right. So these are mission killers. So what's the next one?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I am very pro hallucinogenics for therapeutic purposes with like the soldiers, and it has an 80% cure rate for heroin addiction. Ayahuasca does, but so I'm very pro it. It's just in excess like that, what they were using it for experimentation. That is wild.
Yeah.
All right. So we've done 2. So let's save the next 2 for next week.
You want to say the next 2? Okay.
Yeah, because we've done 2 archetypes.
Maybe do I have the examples of a mission?
Yeah. What are the examples?
I don't think I number these pages. That's not right. Oh, actually, this is a part that you just mentioned, Cindy. Mission-oriented serial killers often believe they are justified for their actions and may not have a sense of self. They may have a sense of self-righteousness and have no moral, and believe they are morally superior to the rest.
Narcissistic personality disorder right there.
Yes. Well, that's reminding me a little bit about X, who we've had on. Do you remember? And Rob, you called him out on it when he said, I'm saving the planet from dumb people. And you're like, you're not saving the planet from dumb people. That's not what you're doing. You're doing it to be self-indulgent.
Right. Yeah, you totally called him out, Rob.
Yeah.
You did.
Which was good.
Yeah. And yeah, that guy is just, he's a performer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's definitely one of the Hollywood trolls of like, that era of like wanting to be famous, working in the porn industry, working in the underbelly, and
Right.
he would do anything to be famous.
Yes.
All right. So who are examples of the mission?
We already talked about some of them. We already talked about
No, those were the visionary. I'm trying to
Those
look.
are visionary ones.
Okay.
Mission-oriented killers, besides the one that just did the CEO of United Healthcare.
Well, yeah, he's a prime example. I'm trying to think of. Oh, here's one. Okay. I'm not too familiar with this case. It's Joseph Paul Franklin, and he was a white supremacist, and he targeted Blacks and Jewish individuals. So he falls into this category. Is that the only one I've listed? I feel like I had a couple more. I don't want to say the ones I just recently talked to.
But yeah, I mean, I think overall it's pretty clear. It's like these killers who think that they have a bigger purpose than themselves, and their egotistical, narcissistic way of thinking they're going to save the world, and they justify their bad behavior through this process, which is what most narcissistic people do anyway. So I think it's just probably on a higher level of mental illness.
Right. And, I've been talking to the mission oriented that I speak with, and I have brought up like coming on the podcast if they would talk, and, they're thinking about it, people always think, serial killers want to be famous, and it's funny because like, I have to like pull them in.
Yeah.
They don't want to be on camera. They don't want to be talking. They're like, I'll talk to you, but they like get scared with it being on a podcast and other people. So it's hard to convince them to do it. But I do have a couple mission-oriented killers who are considering it. So it would be good if we could get them on. And
it'd be interesting to hear their perspective.
Very, very. And it's a very, I think, deep dive, and it's a really good conversation. And I think it really shows, a delusional thought process. Like in real time, you're watching it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, this is so interesting. So next week we'll do the other two archetypes and see what else happens this week. You never know. You might get some interesting information from a bunch of them.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen.
No.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll talk next week.
Definitely.
All right.
All right, Laura. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'll see you next week.
All right.